Have you been thinking about starting sheep farming in South Africa? Maybe you've been looking at livestock auctions, Facebook groups, or chatting to farmers and thinking, this looks like a great business. And on the surface, it can seem simple. Buy a few sheep, put them on a piece of land, wait for lambs, sell them for a profit, but that's not how sheep farming works. In fact, one of the biggest reasons people fail in sheep farming is because they focus on the sheep first and everything else second. So before you buy your first sheep, here are things experienced farmers wish every beginner knew. And some of these lessons can save you thousands of rands. The first thing you need is not sheep, it's grass. This is probably the most important lesson in livestock farming. Your farm doesn't determine how many sheep you can own, your grass does. Many beginners look at a piece of land and think, this looks big enough, but experienced farmers know that carrying capacity is everything. A farm in a high rainfall area of KwaZulu-Natal can support significantly more sheep than the same sized farm in a dry part of the Northern Cape. That's why asking, how many sheep can I keep on 10 hectares, is almost impossible to answer without knowing the location and grazing conditions. The sheep don't care how many hectares you own, they care how much grass grows on those hectares. One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was, don't count your sheep, count your grass, because once the grass is gone, the profit disappears shortly afterwards. The second thing you need is reliable water, and this is where many beginners make a costly mistake. They see a dam, a borehole, or a water tank and assume they're sorted. But what happens when the power goes out? What happens if the pump breaks? What happens during a drought? Experienced farmers don't just think about water. They think about backup water because livestock cannot wait several days while you figure out a solution. Before buying sheep, make sure your water system is dependable and that you have a backup plan. The third thing you need is fencing. And honestly, fencing is one of the least exciting parts of farming, but it's one of the most important. Many new farmers spend all their money on livestock and then try to save money on infrastructure. That's backwards. Good fencing protects your investment. Bad fencing creates problems. Sheep escape, predators get in, neighbor disputes start, and suddenly you're spending money fixing problems that could have been prevented from the beginning. If your budget is limited, it's often better to buy fewer sheep and build proper infrastructure than to buy more sheep and hope for the best. Now let's talk about sheep breeds. One of the questions I get asked most often is, what is the best sheep breed in South Africa? The truth is, there isn't one perfect breed. There's only the breed that suits your environment and your goals. If your focus is on meat production, many South African farmers choose breeds like Dorpers and Meat Masters because they are hardy and well adapted to local conditions. If your focus is on wool production, then merino sheep may be worth considering. The mistakes beginners make is buying whatever is popular or whatever seems cheap. Experienced farmers first ask, what works in my area? What works on my type of veld? What are local farmers successfully running? That information is often worth more than any advice you'll find online. Now here's something many beginners don't think about. Predators. People often budget for sheep. They budget for fencing. Sometimes they even budget for feed. But they forget predators. Depending on where you farm, animals like jackals can become a serious problem, and the losses can add up quickly. Experienced sheep farmers know that predator management isn't something you think about after losses happen. It's something you plan for before the sheep arrive. Let's talk about feed. One of the biggest myths about sheep farming is that sheep only eat grass and therefore cost almost nothing to maintain. The reality is more complicated. During droughts, winter periods and poor grazing seasons, many farmers need supplementary feed. Feed costs can have a huge impact on profitability. That's why experienced farmers focus heavily on veld management. Good farmers are often grass farmers first and sheep farmers second, because the grass ultimately determines what the sheep can produce. Another thing beginners underestimate is health management. Most sheep diseases don't suddenly appear overnight. Usually there are warning signs. A sheep isolates itself, it stops eating, looks uncomfortable, moves differently. Experienced farmers spend time observing their animals. They know what normal behavior looks like. That means they can identify problems early. And in livestock farming, early intervention is often the difference between saving and losing one. Now let's talk about where the money comes from. Many beginners think the money is in buying and selling sheep. But in most successful sheep operation, the real money comes from reproduction. A productive ewe can produce lambs year after year. That's why experienced farmers place enormous value on fertility, mothering ability, and lamb survival rates. A sheep that looks impressive means very little if it doesn't produce consistently. Good genetics matter, but productivity matters even more. Here's another lesson many beginners learn the hard way. Don't start too big. I've seen people buy large numbers of sheep before they've learned the basics, and that can become very expensive very quickly. A smaller flock allows you to learn. You can understand lambing, you can understand health management, you can understand grazing management, and you can make mistakes on a smaller scale. Every farmer makes mistakes. The goal is to make cheap mistakes before making expensive ones. So if you're serious about starting sheep farming in South Africa, here's the order I'd focus on. Understand your grazing, secure your water, build your infrastructure, learn about the breeds that suit your area, develop a basic health and predator management plan, and only then you should start looking at buying sheep. Because sheep farming isn't about buying animals, it's about managing a system. And when that system works, the sheep can thrive. But when that system is broken, even the best sheep in the country won't save the farm. So before you buy your first sheep, make sure you've prepared everything around the sheep first. Because that's what experienced farmers understand. The sheep are the easy part. The management is where the real farming begins. If you found this video useful and you'd like to see more practical South African farming content, make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what farming topic you'd like me to cover next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.